Coming into the math tutoring process, I was completely overwhelmed. I had never taught children before, never written a lesson plan and implemented it, and never sat down to think about my own attitude towards math. When Miss Adams told us that we would be tutoring children in math for 5 weeks, I almost had a panic attack. Yes, I love working with kids, but math has always been a struggle for me. The same thought kept popping up in my head throughout my pre-tutoring planning. Where do I even begin? After realizing that I shared similar math histories with my classmates, I knew right off the bat that I didn't want my students to experience math in the same negative light that I did growing up. When taught properly, I believe math can be engaging and enlightening at the same time. However, since I had no clue where to begin with teaching my students in math, I decided to correlate my tutoring with the construction of a house. First, I had to make sure my students had a solid foundation of the basic concepts before we dove into the more difficult material. On the first day of tutoring, I encouraged the students to share their feelings and ideas with the group by participating in Sunshine Cloud, in which they talked for a minute or so about their day. We concentrated mostly on vocabulary words such as basic addition facts, add-in, sum, and word problems. We discussed what these terms meant, how they're used in math every day, and then we wrote them in our word walls. We would continue to go over these terms for the duration of our tutoring time together because I really wanted the girls to grasp the concepts behind these vocabulary words and use them as a foundation to build upon. I had to make sure that the lessons I taught had good structure. This included making sure that the objective and closing were a match and that the students knew exactly what we would be learning or working on each day. After my students told me their perceptions of math that first day of tutoring, I tried to revolve my future lessons around helping the girls in areas they were most weak. First, we focused on reviewing our basic addition facts, and I explained why it was so important that the girls be able to recall these facts with accuracy. Then we moved on to using regrouping when solving addition and subtraction problems. The girls weren't extremely familiar with regrouping, and I hadn't used it in a long time either, so that was a learning process for both the students and myself. After the students got the hang of regrouping, we progressed to solving word problems and determining if regrouping was required to solve the word problems. After that concept was mastered, we moved to writing our own word problems and solving them. The girls liked this approach to learning math because it was structured and they knew exactly what we would be working on and how we would accomplish the task at hand. Once I had created structure for the tutoring process, I worked on filling in the holes in their math education, or building the walls. My students did great at recalling their basic addition facts, but when it came to subtraction, they were a little shakier. When solving and writing word problems, the girls had difficulty using subtraction because they said they hadn't used subtraction very much in the math classroom, and especially not in word problems. So we focused on learning how to use subtraction and when to use it for several tutoring sessions. The last thing I focused on was the furnishing of the process, or in other words, incorporating manipulatives. I brought manipulatives in immediately because they're a crucial part of understanding math concepts, especially regrouping. The students used base 10 blocks to aid in their understanding of regrouping, and while they were hesitant at first, the girls learned to use the manipulatives efficiently. I was also hesitant to bring in the manipulatives because while I knew they'd be beneficial, I had never used manipulatives in my math education, so I wasn't as familiar with them as I should have been. However, I honestly don't think the girls would have been able to understand the process of regrouping had we not used the base 10 blocks. In terms of assessment, I created a rubric or chart that I would fill out to determine whether or not each student had mastered the skills we addressed. I looked at their work in their math journals and had them explain their thinking when they solved word problems. Overall, I felt that this math tutoring experience was very enlightening and provided me with a teaching opportunity that I had not yet had. It also answered an important question that I worried about from the very beginning. Where do I even begin? While I soon discovered there's not a definite answer to that question, I did learn that you can begin by meeting your students halfway and finding out what they need help with. Math tutoring was not only a learning process for my students, but for myself as well.